My name is Eliza Thorne, and for most of my 31 years I've called Savannah, Georgia, my home. I live for the sweet, heavy scent of magnolias that hangs in the humid air, and the way the Spanish moss drips from the ancient oak trees like tangled gray hair. I restore antique furniture, bringing old, forgotten pieces back to life with careful hands and a patient heart. I suppose I've always been a bit of a romantic, someone who believes that beauty and history are worth preserving. It was that part of me, the part that saw potential in the broken and the discarded, that fell so completely for Julian. When I met him, it wasn't just good, it was like a storybook come to life. He listened, truly listened, to every word I said, his eyes fixed on mine as if I were the only person in the world. We had so much in common, from our love of old movies to the way we both preferred the quiet side of the beach. I felt like I had finally found someone who saw the real me, the Eliza underneath the polish and varnish I showed the world. I opened up to him faster than I ever had with anyone, telling him secrets I'd barely admitted to myself. He was, in a word, perfect. But now I know that if something seems too good to be true, it's because it's a carefully constructed lie. What he was doing wasn't love, it was love bombing, a full-scale assault on my heart. Early on, he took me out on his small boat, navigating the winding waterways to a tiny, uninhabited island just off the coast. He'd packed a gorgeous lunch, complete with homemade pasta salad and a chilled bottle of limoncello. We went diving in the warm water, and he emerged from the waves holding a giant, pearlescent conch shell, which he presented to me as a token of his undying love. A few weeks later, he drove me to the small town where he grew up and took me to his childhood home. He showed me faded photographs of his parents, who had passed away years ago, and then he gave me a small, worn wooden soldier, claiming it was his most cherished childhood toy. I held it in my hands, its paint chipped and faded, and I was absolutely certain that this man was the one. Then, slowly, the cracks began to show. It started with small things, little cuts that were easy to ignore at first. A cynical comment about a dress I loved, a sharp remark about something I said that made me feel small and foolish. He started flirting with other women right in front of me, with the waitress at our favorite cafe or the cashier at the grocery store, just to get a reaction. When I would eventually break down and cry, he would instantly transform back into the romantic, loving man I first met, apologizing profusely and showering me with affection. But his cruel outbursts became more frequent and more intense, and the apologies felt less sincere each time. I was constantly walking on eggshells, exhausted and drained from the emotional roller coaster, always trying to prove my love for him just to earn a few moments of the kindness he had once given so freely. I felt like I was failing some kind of test I didn't even know I was taking. The moment my world truly shattered was on a quiet Tuesday evening. I had just stepped out of a long, hot shower, wrapped in a towel with steam still clinging to my skin, when I saw him hunched over his laptop. On the screen, plain as day, was an online dating site. He snapped the laptop shut when he saw me, but it was too late. He tried to twist it, of course, saying he wanted to see if I'd get jealous and controlling again, a test of my trust. But I didn't believe him for a second. The image of that website was burned into my mind, and a cold dread settled deep in my stomach. I felt a strange sense of calm as I tried to solve the problem, as if a part of me had been expecting this all along. I remembered a conversation from early in our relationship. Julian was terrible with computers, and he had called me one night, frustrated because he couldn't figure out how to set up an account on a chess website. I tried to walk him through it, but he got impatient and just told me the username and password he wanted to use so I could do it for him. He used the same simple combination for everything. That night, long after he had fallen asleep, I crept out of bed and opened his laptop. My hands were shaking as I typed the dating site's address into the browser. I navigated to the login page and entered the username and password he'd given me for the chess site. My heart pounded in my chest as the page loaded. I got in, and what I saw broke me into a million pieces. It wasn't just that he was chatting with other women. It was the content of those conversations. He had met up with them, slept with them, described it all in vivid detail. He shared intimate things about me, things I had told him in confidence, twisting my insecurities into jokes to make himself sound more appealing to these strangers. He complained about me, painting me as a clingy, unstable woman he was stuck with. I read message after message, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. The pain was so overwhelming, so physical, that I slid off the chair and onto the cold hardwood floor, curling into a ball and crying like a lost child. I had known our relationship wasn't perfect, but I had been clinging so desperately to the memory of that perfect beginning, believing it was real. Now I had to face the truth. It was all a performance and I was just the audience. I lay there on the floor for hours, my tears soaking into the wood. Then something inside me shifted. The deep, gut-wrenching sadness began to harden, to crystallize into a cold, sharp anger. The tears stopped. I sat up, wiped my face, and a plan began to form in my mind. He thought he was a master player. I was about to change the rules of his little game. I was going to get even. I spent the next day creating a fake online dating profile. I called her Serafina, a mysterious artist new to Savannah. I found photos online of a woman who was beautiful in a way that I knew would appeal to him. Bohemian, a little wild, the opposite of the stable, reliable girlfriend he had at home. I wrote a bio that was intriguing and elusive. Then I sent him a message. He responded almost immediately. We chatted for a few days, and I played the part of Serafina perfectly, echoing his own love-bombing techniques back at him. I was witty, mysterious, and deeply interested in everything he had to say. Soon enough, he suggested we meet. I pretended to be hesitant, shy. He, of course, insisted. I reluctantly agreed to meet him at a large, busy coffee house in the historic district on Saturday afternoon. On that Saturday, I went to the coffee house early, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, a disguise that made me feel like a spy in my own life. I chose a small table in a dark corner where I had a clear view of the entrance but knew he wouldn't spot me. A part of me, a small, foolish part, hoped he wouldn't show up, that this was all just a terrible nightmare. 10 minutes before our scheduled date, I pulled out my phone and called him. "Hey," I said, my voice sweet and normal. "Where are you?" I was thinking we could meet up for a bit. My heart sank when he replied smoothly, "Oh, sorry, babe, I can't. I have an errand I have to run for my boss." The lie was so easy for him. I hung up and kept my eyes glued to the door, and then there he was. He walked in, looking around eagerly. He sat at a table near the front and waited. At first, I thought I was going to have a panic attack. My breath hitched, and the room started to spin. But I took a deep breath, focusing on the cold anger that had become my anchor. He waited patiently at first, then started fidgeting, checking his phone, his eyes darting to every woman who walked through the door. And then, in a moment of what felt like divine intervention, a woman came in who looked remarkably like the photos I had used for Serafina's profile. Julian's eyes lit up. He stood up and approached her, his smile practiced and charming. He said something to her, and she just shook her head, clearly confused. He persisted, leaning in closer, and her expression soured. She said something sharp and loud enough for the tables around them to hear, telling him to leave her alone. He slunk back to his table, his face flushed with embarrassment. He waited for another 30 minutes, his confidence draining away with every passing second, before he finally gave up and left. That evening, I logged back into the dating site as Serafina. I sent him a message. I told him I had been the woman he approached, that I had seen him and found him physically unattractive in person, but I didn't have the courage to say it to his face, so I pretended not to know who he was. I apologized over and over, making it sound like I was the one who was embarrassed. He replied that it was okay, no hard feelings. But I knew him. I knew his narcissistic pride had taken a massive blow. There was no way he was unbothered, so I did it again. And again, and again. I created a whole cast of fictional women. There was Chloe, the bubbly yoga instructor who stood him up at a fancy restaurant after he'd already ordered an expensive bottle of wine. There was Isabella, the PhD student who rescheduled their date 3 times before ghosting him completely. There was Madison, the musician who canceled at the last minute for a gig she claimed was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Over the next 2 months, at least 10 of his secret dates went terribly, publicly wrong. I watched his confidence crumble into paranoia. He became irritable and suspicious, the charming facade cracking to reveal the ugly insecurity beneath. I decided it was enough. The game was over, and it was time for the final act. I chose a busy restaurant for the breakup, a place filled with people and noise where he couldn't make a scene. We sat down, and before he could even order a drink, I looked him straight in the eye. "It's over, Julian," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I know you've been cheating on me, you lying son of a gun." He immediately launched into his usual routine, denying everything, trying to twist the narrative and gaslight me, telling me I was being a jealous, crazy freak. He was so predictable. I just let him talk, waiting for him to run out of steam. When he finally paused for breath, I leaned forward and smiled a small, cold smile. "All those failed dates," I said softly, letting the words hang in the air between us. "All the women who stood you up, who thought you were unattractive, who canceled at the last second, that was all me." I watched his face as he processed it. Confusion, then disbelief, then a wave of dawning horror followed by pure, impotent rage. "How?" he choked out, his voice barely a whisper. I just looked at him and said the password he had given me so long ago, the key to his secret world and to his ultimate humiliation. Then I stood up, turned around, and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. A few months went by. I moved to a new apartment, poured myself into my work, and slowly began to piece my heart back together. One day, I received a long email from him. It wasn't an apology. It was a declaration. He wrote that what I did to him was ingenious, a masterpiece of revenge that proved I was the true love of his life. He said he had completely lost the will for online dating, because now he both fears and hopes that every new woman he messages, every new profile he sees, is just me in another disguise. I never answered that email or any of the other messages he sent over the years. He still tries to contact me sometimes, even now, but I just delete them. He doesn't realize that the ultimate revenge wasn't just making him feel foolish. It was making him see me everywhere, while I never have to see him at all.